Hey everyone, I'm rather incoherent. I just spent a huge amount of time giving feedback on the Bloodborne alpha, like twice the length of time I would normally invest into a normal campaign. So I'll be doing some shorter videos in the coming weeks, and today I'm going to be talking about my 5 favorite assets in the game. Before I get into number 5, well connected, I do want to say, I'm an optimizer, I'm a power gamer, I played Hearthstone and Elder Scrolls Legends competitively, and as a result, all of my favorite cards are going to be powerful. Now that said, this isn't a power ranking. Occult Lexicon is not on this list. There are a lot of cards that are stronger than what I'm showing here, but these are typically very strong cards, and I usually am thinking about them quite a lot when I'm building decks. Now, getting into number 5, well connected, this is here as a gateway drug to rogue big money. This is the slippery slope that happens every time you make a rogue and you think, I don't really want to play big money. You still run a huge amount of economy, Falsium bargains, e-caches, easy marks, because your assets are just stupid expensive. So are your events. Pilfer, that costs 4, Intel Report, that costs 4, Leo, that costs 6. Every rogue deck runs tons of economy, and the promise of turning excess economy into Mythos resilience, or just better skill checks, or doing scenario tests that you otherwise couldn't, that's really enticing. Every single rogue character, even if they don't want to play big money, their level 0 deck likely takes at least a passing glance at well connected, and they think about it. And it's a real easy slippery slope to fall down. You look at this, and then there's this gravitational pull towards what I call the 4 horsemen of the big money apocalypse. You've got the Black Fan, Gias, Haste, and the upgraded Well Connected. Either Well Connected will do though. Black Fan and Haste combine to give you 2 extra actions every turn. Black Fan and Gias combine to give you +2 to every skill. Well Connected, either version makes you Mythos immune. The better version lets you do anything else every turn too. And you might say that Haste doesn't necessarily mean big money, neither does Gias, these have nothing to do with big money. I would say that's untrue. Go make a big money deck and tell me how much room you have, for instance, for skill cards. You don't. It's actually easier and cheaper to run Gias than skill cards in most big money decks. So it fits very naturally alongside the Black Fan. As for Haste, this is just typically a rogue card. This isn't really part of it, but I find that if you're making an asset-heavy deck, Haste is a great way to make sure they pay off. You want this extra action, it's not really part of it, but it fits in the package so nice it'd be weird not to include it. And generally, just the pull of these 4 cards, of Haste and Gias and the Black Fan and Well Connected, slippery slopes your rogue straight into a big money deck every time. This is a me problem, I'm sure other people have lots of rogue decks they make that don't always use this shit. They play rogue and their assets actually fit on the board and tabletop sim? That's not what happens with me. Every time, this shit gets me. Because Well Connected is just such an enticing promise, and the idea of cutting this to do something else just doesn't work for me. Now, moving on to my 4th favorite card, we have Brand of Gatha level 1. I've never actually played this on the channel. That's not true, I played it in Lily Channel on the very first series I made in Carcosa, I think. Brand of Gatha is just nuts. It only costs 2, it's way cheaper than most other weapons. It only costs 1 experience, that's almost nothing. It takes up an arcane slot, so in Guardians, this is where it shines the most, obviously. It is basically slotless. You can shoot over with it with no risk of hitting your teammates because you just don't spend charges if you fail. And then there's a bunch of other hidden stuff about this card that's really important, that comes back to it being slotless. This is a backup weapon for a flamethrower. But it's more than that, because if you draw a flamethrower, there's still a reason to play this. Flamethrower can only hit enemies you're engaged with. You can't shoot over. Brand of Gatha is a weapon you can run while flamethrower is in play that lets you shoot over if you need the action economy, and at no risk at that. Likewise, on Nathaniel Cho, if you're running boxing gloves, Brand of Gatha doesn't require a bandolier like any other weapon would. There are so many little things about this card. I regularly talk about like the S tier of weapons, and when I do, I always forget to mention Brand of Gatha. I wouldn't put the level 4 version in my S tier. I'd put the level 4 version like right at the top of my A tier of weapons. But the level 1 version, like per experience, is the best weapon in the game by no small margin. It's insane just how much work you get out of this level 1 card. It is legitimately one of the best cards in the game. More than any other card on the list, Brand of Gatha is here because of its power level and Guardian. As a Mystic card, I do think it's better than the other Mystic 5 assets, but it's much more comparable to them. As a Guardian card, it costs way less than all your other weapons, it doesn't compete for slots, it shoots over at no risk giving you action economy, it deals damage at like the acceptable rate for the position in the game it is. It just smoothly fits into your decks to fix the economy, fix the competitive slots, fix problems with your in-game weapon setup if you're going towards Flamethrower. It's just such a nice, efficient card anytime you build a Guardian. and it's really genuinely hard to justify why you aren't putting this in the deck, much more so than why you are. Now, coming over to my third favorite card in the game, it's True Magic. I played this twice, but once I was just blatantly cheating because I didn't realize that this had an asterisk, because this is a generically named card. You can still do it. You can still rely wholly on True Magic, you just need a Twilight Catherine price in play. This card's really cool. It's one of the highest promises of any card, infinite Mystic assets. No cost, you don't need to spend the economy to play them, you get to have basically all of them in play at once. It's such an insane promise, but trying to get the deck to work, to be reliable, to find your True Magic, to find your Twilight, to find the spells, to actually have the experience to fit all that shit in the deck, because presumably these drawing cards aren't just free. The economy, the draw, the experience, it's such a hard problem to solve, and most characters, if they build True Magic, it's just a trap. My loot deck at Edge of the Earth recently absolutely crushed it with True Magic, and trying to get there, trying to make that happen is one of my favorite deck building puzzles in the game, and I really just love this card. Now, on to my second favorite card, it's the new Mr. Rook. It's not the old Mr. Rooks, I hate those guys, it's the new Mr. Rook. This guy is actually a balanced card now. He's no longer a lightning bolt, now he's just an ability. And at first I looked at this and was like, oh god, they hurt Mandy so much. This is just the Mandy nerf because no one else runs Mr. Rook. And that was true, but then you look at what the new Mr. Rook is and other people actually start considering running him now. Because before, at 8 experience, no one cared about Mr. Rook enough to do it. Untabooed, he was just the best card in the game. I don't even care what your job was, who you were playing. If you had access to untabooed Mr. Rook and were not playing him, it was a mistake. Just objectively, the card's insane. And then they nerfed him down to 8 experience, and that was still enough for Mandy. They were still willing to spend their first 8 experience on him every time, but it was just a Mandy card, and it was still too strong in Mandy. She'd be willing to spend like 12 experience on the bastard. But now that it's an action ability, that is a huge nerf to Mandy. It's basically an action every round because of Mr. Rook getting nerfed that Mandy loses, but other characters start looking at Mr. Rook to do the thing he's supposed to do. And he is representative of my favorite type of card in the game, Expendable Soak. I don't mean like Cherished Keepsake, I don't mean soak assets. I mean a card that has a job and does that job, and then when it finishes, you can just let them die and they get value like that too. Laboratory Assistant is a great example of this type of card, where you play it, you get value, then it soaks for you and it dies. Mr. Rook can sacrifice action economy for consistency. That's what he was supposed to do, it's what he does now, and that's a really, really valuable thing. It was critical in the True Magic loot deck that I just referenced. Mr. Rook gives you unparalleled consistency, but you have to be looking for something that's good enough to make up for the actions you give to him. And that's a really, really cool deck building thing. Trying to decide if Mr. Rook is giving you enough to justify giving him the actions. Do you need the soak? That can help tilt the balance. Mr. Rook is a very interesting card when you're looking at deck building now, and I really, really like him in his current state. He's one of my favorite cards in the game. And my number one favorite card in the game, sadly doesn't have an image yet, it's Dirty Fighting. This card is fantastic. If you told me they could print a single card that would fix the entirety of Rogue Fighting, I would have thought you were crazy. And I would also have followed that up with saying, so how broken is Tony now? And actually, they did. This card fixes Rogue Fighting and doesn't buff Tony. So first of all, it just lets you attack as a free action after you evade somebody. That's so good. Also, funny thing I never realized, you don't have to successfully evade them. If you fail, you can still use this. I'm normally using this alongside of a Knuckle Duster, so I wouldn't really want to, but I had no idea that you could use this on a failed evade attempts. That's very funny. Like, obviously you wouldn't get the +2 to skill value. You shouldn't do it. But if you're like a big money deck with the well connected in play and you just want the action economy, you actually can just punch them after the failed dodge, which is really funny. But yeah, the after evade take a fight enemy is awesome. It ignores the aloof keyword? I had no idea. Oh man, I never read this line. I don't think it matters in the situations I've seen it. I think I've seen a lot of 3 health enemies with aloof like the penguins in Edge of the Earth, where one attack with a Knuckle Duster doesn't kill them to begin with. It's even better than I thought it was. Like, we found 2 different things this card did that I didn't know it did. It doesn't care if you successfully evade, it ignores a loop for the first attack. That's so nice. I didn't know those things out the card. But the main thing it does is it gives you the action economy back from when you take your dodge action, and it gives you +2 to your fist if you dodge them. And you know the difference in Skid's and Finn's fist and Tony's? It's 2. If you have Dirty Fighting in play and you dodge a guy, you get the action back. which is not getting you to Tony, because Tony was up in action from you originally, so you're still down in action compared to Tony, but it's getting you to the same number. And on Finn, where the evade is free, Finn's action economy and number of attacks and skill value in Fist is actually the same as Tony's with Dirty Fighting. This card is insane. It basically single-handedly fixed all of the rogue fighters without buffing Tony. It's a miracle of game design, and I'm so happy with the fact that this card exists. I'm also very happy that I never played Finn or Skids before this card existed, because I would have to go back and play all the non-Tony fighters again. Because like, holy shit, this is so much better than it used to be. Like, the state of rogue fighting for, what, 8 expansions was just a mess, and then this comes out and like retroactively fixes all the old cards and investigators. Dirty Fighting is easily my favorite card, not just because it's powerful. It is definitely powerful, but because it's such a like linchpin solution to the rogue problem. Everything rogue ever had feels like it was built around this card, which would be cool if that were true, but it's the other way around. This card was the solution to all the missing pieces in the rogue archetype for fighters, and the fact that it was found and printed in a way without buffing Tony is just incredible, and it is absolutely my favorite card in the game. And apparently it's better than I thought it was. That's really funny. You find things out when you read the card, right? Who knew that it ignored a loop? Like, how could anyone possibly been bothered to read the 4th sentence in this? That's just unreasonable. Anyways, I've been rather incoherent. This has been my favorite 5 assets in the game. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help the channel grow, and I'll see you in the next one.